pag-uusapan natin ang tungkol sa tinatawag na common grace. Ang common grace ay iba naman sa tinatawag dispensation of grace. Okay, so ito po yung dispensation of grace. Ito po ay after the death ng ating Panginoon, after the death, burial, and resurrection, or after the ascension. Ito po yung dispensation of grace. Ayan, at ibinigay kay Apostle Paul ang programang ito, or ipinagkatiwala kay Apostle Paul ang programang ito. Pero hindi po yun yung pag-uusapan natin, the dispensation of grace, kundi itong common grace. Yan, yung tinatawag na common grace. So, pag-uusapan natin yung mga ilang bagay regarding sa common grace. So, examples of the common grace ay the physical realm. The physical realm. The unbelievers continue to live in this world solely because of God's common grace. Every breath that people take is of grace, for the wages of sin is death, not life. So ito po yung common grace kung bakit ang mga unbeliever hanggang ngayon ay nag-exist. O hindi naman sila agad-agad pinarusahan ng ating Panginoon, hanggang ngayon ay nabubuhay sila sa mundong ibabaw. So hindi sila agad pinarusahan. Yun po ay nakakaranas sila ng common grace. Genesis chapter 3 verse 18. Genesis chapter 3 verse 18. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. So, pero mo yan, lahat. Ito po yung common grace na lahat po ay makakakain sa lahat. Sa field. So, yun po yung example ng common grace. At isa pa, sa Matthew 5:44. Matthew chapter 5, 44 to 45. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which they despitefully use you and persecute you. Verse 45, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven, for he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. So ano po yung point dito? Nakakaranas po sila ng common grace, mga unbelievers or believers. So regarding po dito, halimbawa yung araw, create ng ating Panginoon yung sun. So itong sun ay magliliwanag sa lahat, hindi lang po sa mga believers, kundi ang mga unbelievers din po ay makakaranas din po sila ng liwanag sa araw at sa ulan. Sa ulan. Ang Panginoon ay nagpadala ng ulan. Hindi naman ang mga believers ang nakakaranas ng ulan. Lahat po, pati mga unbelievers, ay nakakaranas po sila ng ulan. So yun po yung common grace. And in Acts 14, 16 to 17. Acts 14, 16 to 17. Who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness, in that he did good, and gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. See? Pati mga unbelievers, mga believers ay nakakaranas po dito sa tinatawag na common grace. Okay, yun po yung physical, under po doon sa physical realm na needs ng ating physical na pangangatawan. So yun po regarding sa food, sa araw, sa ulan, yun po yung tinatawag na physical realm under po sa tinatawag na common grace. Pangalawa, the intellectual realm. The intellectual realm. All people are able to have some grasp of truth. Indeed, some have great intelligence and understanding. This also must be seen as a result of God's grace. Yung tinatawag na intellectual realm, na kung saan ang tao ay malaya na alamin ang katotohanan. Indeed, some have great intelligence, di ba? May mga ganun po, may mga unbelievers na magagaling or highly intellectual. So, kung baga, mas marurunong, yan po, mga marurunong. Yan po yung tinatawag na intellectual realm in John 1:9. John chapter 1, verse 9. That was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Yan. So, yun po yung sample sa tinatawag na intellectual realm in Romans 1:21 also. Romans chapter 1, verse 21. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Ayan po. And then, Acts 17. Ayan. Dagdagan pa natin dito sa Acts 17. 22-23. Verse 22, Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with these inscriptions to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship. Him declare I unto you. Ito po yung ang basehan nila ay yung kanilang intellect, yung kanilang kagalingan, yung kanilang kaalaman. So ito po ay nagawa nila. So yun po yung tinatawag na intellectual realm. Kung tutusin, ay inabolish na ito ng ating Panginoon. Pero yun nga, katulad ng nabanggit po natin, ito ay under sa tinatawag na common grace. Isa pa, the moral realm. The moral realm. God also, by common grace, restrains people from being as evil as they could be. So, yun po, ang nais naman talaga ng Panginoon na kung maaari ay hindi sila gumawa ng masama. Yun po yung the moral realm according to Psalms 81:12. Psalms 81 verse 12, So I gave them up unto their own hearts lust, and they walk in their own counsels. So, yun po. Then, Romans 1:24. Romans chapter 1, verse 24. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. And then verse 26, For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And then verse 28, And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. See? Nais ng Panginoon, ayon nga sa kanyang standard, na ang tao ay pipigilan niya or hindi niya i-allow na gumawa ng mga bagay na ito, mga kasamaan, pero under po ito sa tinatawag na common grace. Kasi nangyayari, ginagawa ng karamihan. Mayroon pa po sa Romans 2:14-15. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which shew the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts, that meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. So ganun po yun, na gusto ng Panginoon na magbago o talagang umiwas ang tao, pero ang tao ay talagang ayon sa kanilang natural na sabihin nating ginagawa or nakasanayan ay ginagawa nila kahit sabihin ng Panginoon na bawal. So yun po ay under sa tinatawag common grace. Dapat ito ay pinarusahan na kung tutuusin. Pero yun nga, umiiral po dito ang tinatawag common grace. Meron pa, the creative realm. The creative realm, God gives to us an ability to appreciate beauty in many areas of life. So ito po yung na pag sinasabing creative realm ay na-appreciate natin itong ginawa ng ating Panginoon, yung kanyang creation. Masasabi natin, wow, napakaganda, amazing itong ginawa ng Panginoon. Yun po ang tinatawag na the creative realm, na mayroon tayong ability to appreciate sa ginawa ng ating Panginoon. Mayroon pa yung the societal realm. The societal realm, God's grace is also evident in the existence of various organizations and structures in a human society. So yun po ang yung isa sa i-consider po natin yung tinatawag na societal realm. Base po dito na talagang sa biyaya ng Panginoon, the existence of various organization and structures in human society. Kahit itong ginawa ng organization or society ay hindi inline sa nais ng Panginoon, pero nga under sa tinatawag common grace. Genesis chapter 5 verse 4. 5 verse 4, and the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and begat sons and daughters. Yan, ito po yung generation to generation. Then in Genesis 4:17, 4:17, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So yun po yung sa society, yung sa structure or the organization, or dito po mapansin natin na iba't ibang klaseng organization structure sa human society. Yan inalaw ng Panginoon. Siya nga po yung nag-start ng tao, at isa sa mga sinasabi niya is multiply and replenish the earth. In Genesis 4:19, and Lamech took unto him 2 wives, the name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other is Zillah. Then in verse 26, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then he began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Yan, ito po ay under the common grace ng ating Panginoon, kaya inalaw po niya ito. Isa pa yung religious realm. Mayroon pong tinatawag na religious. Okay, religious realm. Even in the realm of human religion, God's common grace brings some blessing to unbelieving people. See? The religious realm, even in the realm of human religion, God's common grace brings some blessings to unbelieving people. Dapat, kung tutuusin sa mga believers lang, pero kahit mga unbelievers, nakakaranas po sila sa tinatawag common grace. Matthew 5:44, balikan po natin. Matthew chapter 5 verse 44, But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Yan. So ito po yung under sa religious realm. And then in 1 Timothy chapter 2, 1 and 2. 1 Timothy chapter 2, 1 and 2, I exhort therefore that first of all supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. Yan, isa po yun sa pinag-uusapan dito is a religious realm na pwede natin silang ipanalangin. Yung mga unbelievers or nasa government, nasa authority, ay ipanalangin po natin. Yun po ay under sa tinatawag religious realm. Then a common grace and a special grace influence each other. Common grace and special grace influence each other. Common grace, of course, influence and enrich the church, since apart from God's common grace given to carpenters and other kinds of craftsmen, there would be no church buildings. Apart from common grace given to printers and typesetters and book binders, there would be no Bibles. But a special grace that God gives to those who are saved brings more of the blessings of common grace to unbelievers living in the realm of the church influence. Ayan po, makikita natin dito yung kaibahan sa common grace at saka yung special grace. So sa common grace, na-mention po natin kanina na lahat nakakaranas. Pag sabihin naman natin special grace, yung mga naniniwala naman ay makakaranas doon sa ipinangako ng ating Panginoon. Next is the common grace does not save people. So dito po ay napakaliwanag po itong tinatawag na common grace ay hindi po ito does not save people. In spite of all of this, we must realize that common grace is different from saving grace. So ang common grace ay iba po ito sa tinatawag na saving grace. The common grace does not change the human heart. Ang common grace ay hindi po kayang baguhin ang puso ng isang tao. Matthew 22:37. Matthew 22, verse 37, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Yan. And in Romans 14, verse 23, Romans 14:23. And he that doubteth is damned if he eats, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. So, yun po ay under sa tinatawag na ito po, yung common grace does not save people. So, hindi kayang iligtas ang tao at baguhin ang puso ng isang tao. So, reasons for common grace. Ito po may mga reason. Reasons for common grace. So, to redeem those who will be saved. So, ito po yung reasons for common grace ay i-redeem those who will be saved. So, yun po, may mga reason po na makikita po natin dito. And then, to demonstrate God's goodness and mercy. Yan, pag sinasabi kasi natin, yung common grace ay talagang nais ng Panginoon lahat ay maligtas or manumbalik sa Kanya. Both Israel, and Gentiles. Yan po. Another reason is to demonstrate God's justice. So yun po ang another reason is to demonstrate God's justice. And then, another is to demonstrate God's glory. To demonstrate God's glory. God's glory is shown in many ways by the activities of human beings in all the areas in which common grace is operate. So, yun po yung mga reason na makikita po natin regarding po nga doon sa tinatawag common grace. Under po dito sa pinag-uusapan po natin. Ngayon, our response to the doctrines of common grace. So, ano naman ang response dito? Ano naman ang ating response regarding sa doktrina ng common grace? Common grace does not mean that those who receive it will be saved. Romans 5:10. Romans chapter 5, verse 10, for if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of His Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by His life. And also in Colossians chapter 1:21. Colossians 1:21. And you that were sometimes alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath He reconciled. So, yun po yung number 1, a common grace does not mean that those who receive it will be saved. Next is we must be careful not to reject the good things that unbelievers do as totally evil. By common grace, unbelievers do some good, and we should see God's hand in it and be thankful for common grace as it operates in every friendship, every act of kindness, every way in which brings blessings to others. So, ganun po yung makikita natin ay may mga unbelievers na marespeto. So, hindi po natin sila totally na i-reject na ang kanilang ginawa ay evil. Then, next is the doctrines of common grace should stir our hearts to much greater thankfulness to God. These blessings in the world are not only evidence of God's power and wisdom, they are also continually manifestations of His abundant grace. So, yun po yung patungkol po dito sa issue ng tinatawag na common grace. Pag sinasabing common grace, ito po ay general act ng ating Panginoon para sa lahat. Pero kung pag-usapan naman dispensation of grace, ay iba po yun. Yung dispensation of grace, iba po ang pinag-uusapan dahil lahat ng mga naniniwala sa ating Panginoong Hesus under this dispensation of grace ay tinatawag body of Christ. Yan. Tinatawag na body of Christ. Ibig sabihin, ang body of Christ ay sila lang po yung makakaranas doon sa heavenly na promise ng ating Panginoon. Only the body of Christ ang makakaranas sa sinasabing the heavenly blessings, the spiritual blessings. Ito lang po. Hindi po katulad ng common grace na pati mga unbelievers, believers ay makakaranas po ginawa ng ating Panginoon lahat ng tao sa mundong ito. Alright, so maraming salamat.